Darkcast Network, indie pods with a dark side.
Hello and welcome back to a very special episode of Fuck That, along with Brenda from Horrifying History.
Hello.
Brenda, do you remember where you were when news of Scandoval broke exactly 1 year and 1 day ago today?
Oh, where was I? Oh my gosh. I think I was actually working. And then the texts start coming in.
Same. I was working and then I had to stop everything I was doing and read all about it. And then that was the only content I consumed for approximately, I would say still to this day,
months.
For those of you that are unfamiliar with what we're talking about, this was the reality television headline heard around the world, literally. Suddenly, the name Tom Sandoval, gross, was a familiar household name, whether you watch reality TV or not, causing this B-list Bravo celebrity, heavy on the air quotes, to become the most hated worm with a mustache in America.
You're a worm with a mustache.
Oh, yeah. And us here in Canada, we don't like him either.
So last week, Rachel Leviss, who took a break from Sir's goat cheese balls, decided to go rogue and serve up a hot, steaming plate of legal vengeance against Tom. Why, you might ask? Just a tiny, inconsequential matter of an affair that's blown up bigger than Jax Taylor's ego. And Tom, bless his little heart, probably thought that mixing drinks was complicated until he got a taste of mixing love and litigation. So this week, Brenda and I are going to dissect, discuss, and definitely dish out unsolicited advice on the legal tango between Rachel and Tom. Strap in, dear listeners. Pour yourself a Pumptini because we are about to peel back the layers of this onion, which has more layers than Stassi's birthday outfit paired with an extra-large statement necklace. I figured you'd appreciate those references.
Very much so. Very much so.
So I want to give a quick VPR rundown for those of you that don't know what Vanderpump Rules are. I'm going to assume most of my listeners are like, what the fuck is that? What are they talking about? For the listeners who have been living under a rock or have been productively using their time in ways that don't involve binging reality TV, let's take a crash course into what Vanderpump Rules is all about. Think of it as your guilty pleasure, but you haven't realized it's a pleasure yet. Imagine a world where the cocktails flow as freely as the drama, and that's Vanderpump Rules in a nutshell. This gem of a show orbits around Lisa Vanderpump, a real-life queen of class, sass, and the occasional barking dog who oversees a crew of the most photogenic restaurant staff you've ever seen at Sir, which is a restaurant in West Hollywood. And by photogenic, I mean they're more likely to be found stirring the pot of drama than actually stirring a drink. So the staff at Sir, which stands for...
What does it stand for? Sexy? Oh, I don't remember that part. It's sexy something something.
Sexy Unique Restaurant, which I love, by the way. The staff are an intriguing mix of aspiring models, actors, and singers, which in Hollywood is speak for waiting for my big break while I serve you a Pumptini. They're young, hot, and they have more relationship drama than a Lifetime movie special, to be quite frank.
I don't even know how these guys actually are friends, to be honest with you, which makes the show great.
Yeah, it's seriously the most toxic group of people combined together in one, but we love them for it. We love them for it. So the bottom line is, if you're in the mood for a show where the rules of decorum are thrown out of the window faster than Jax can say I'm sorry for the 100 millionth time, then Vanderpump Rules is your ticket to a wild ride. It's a masterclass in how to not behave in a workplace with a side of romance and a dash of existential despair. Welcome to Sir, where the only thing more complicated than Lisa's cocktail menu is the staff's love lives. We're going to be talking about a lawsuit, but there are a lot of people involved in this.
Oh, yeah.
How would you describe Tom Sandoval, the most hated man in America, the worm with a mustache?
Well, I think the worm with a mustache is a really good descriptor right there. I can honestly say I never liked that guy from season 1. It was like he was just really putting out a facade. And behind that facade, he was the worst of them all. And you would see little blips of it here and there. And I never was a big fan of him. And then he's put on the white nail polish and that was done.
The gel polish. At 40, he's like, I'm just going to start painting my nails with white gel polish and I'm going to grow this like 1970s porn stash. He looks like what a Newport cigarette smells like.
That's a good descriptor.
Yeah. So for those of you that aren't Vanderpump fans, Tom is at the head of this lawsuit along with his former partner, who is a queen, Ariana Maddox, and they were both bartenders. Ariana and Tom started dating in season 2, end of season 2. Yeah. So they were together for 9 years. They were, just to bring everybody up to speed, because there's actually a lot of lawsuits going on right now. They were common law married. They bought a house together. Ariana didn't believe in marriage, although she did say she'd consider it for Tom. And they bought a house together. They bought a lot of custom furniture together. And what ended up happening, Ariana's actually now suing Tom regarding their shared home, which I'm not going to get into today. We're just going to be talking about the revenge porn lawsuit. There's another, I was going to say character, but they're not a character. They're a real person. DJ James Kennedy. He then started dating this girl who was going by the name of Raquel. Her birth name is Rachel. She's now going by Rachel again. So I'm going to call her Rachel, but in the show, she went by Raquel Leviss. They started dating. She was going to school in Arizona, so they did a long distance thing. She ended up moving in after she was done with school, moving to Los Angeles. They got engaged. I'm not going to talk about it right now because it's discussed in the lawsuit for some reason, but they had a really rocky relationship. Rachel ended up breaking up with James after the proposal. And at some point, for 7 months at least, Rachel and Tom Sandoval had an affair. Now, Rachel and Ariana got very, very close, along with Sheena Shea, who was Ariana's best friend. I say was because we know that's not a thing anymore, but we won't jump into that. While this is going on in season 10, which is last season, we're currently on season 11, episode 5. Episode 6 comes out on Wednesday. This is terrible. I need a hobby. While season 10 was filming, Tom and Rachel were having an affair. Ariana and Rachel are very close. During season 10, Ariana not only loses her grandmother, who she was really close to, but she also loses her dog. And when she goes to her grandmother's funeral, Rachel is staying over their home and having sex with Tom in their home, in their bed. It is the worst way that you can cheat on somebody, literally. So at some point, they were at Tom and his phone falls out of his pocket. And I think Ariana said in the podcast that something in her gut told her to check it. His phone wasn't locked. So she opened it up and there were screen recordings of Rachel and Tom on FaceTime. And Rachel was doing intimate things. And now we have the lawsuit. So the lawsuit, which involves Rachel and Tom, she also mentions Ariana and Does 1 through 50. Very curious to know who Does 1 through 50 are. It can be analyzed in the context of California's revenge porn laws. There are a couple specific penal codes that are mentioned, which I'll read through. One statute that reads, I'm just going to read from it exactly so people can know. So Section 4, a person who intentionally distributes or causes to be distributed the image of the intimate body part or parts of another identifiable person, or an image of the person depicted engaged in an act of sexual intercourse, sodomy, oral copulation, sexual penetration, or an image of masturbation by the person depicted or in which the person depicted participates under circumstances in which the persons agree or understand that the image shall remain private. The person distributing the image knows or should know that distribution of the image will cause serious emotional distress, and the person depicted suffers that distress. And then they explain. So a person intentionally distributes an image described in subparagraph A when that person personally distributes the image. A person intentionally causes an image described in subparagraph A to be distributed when that person arranges, specifically requests, or intentionally causes another person to distribute the image. And as used in this paragraph, the following terms have the following meaning. So distribute can mean exhibiting in public or giving possession to. Plaintiff Rachel Leviss is a former cast member on Vanderpump Rules. It just talks about Bravo, blah, 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 blah. The case arises from a scandal of epic proportions. I love the verbiage. It's so dramatic. Starting in March 2023, stemming from an affair between Leviss and another cast member, Tom Sandoval. Scandoval, as it came to be known, went instantly viral and was the subject of extraordinary press coverage, even in the mainstream media. Scandoval injected new life into a previously faltering series, causing its viewership to explode to unseen levels and making its cast members mega celebrities. Due to a narrative deliberately fomented by Bravo, Evolution, and the cast, Leviss became an object of public scorn and ridicule. To be clear, Leviss has repeatedly acknowledged that her actions were morally objectionable and hurtful to Ariana Maddox. She has offered numerous apologies. There is more to the story, however. Lost in the mix was that Leviss was a victim of the predatory and dishonest behavior of an older man who recorded sexually explicit videos of her without her knowledge or consent, which were then distributed, disseminated, and discussed publicly by a scorned woman seeking vengeance, catalyzing the scandal. Leviss ultimately checked herself into a mental health facility and remained there for 3 months while Bravo, Evolution, and the cast milked the interest her excoriation had peaked. To make matters worse, Leviss was misled by Bravo and Evolution into believing that she was contractually barred from speaking out about her mistreatment. As a result, she suffered in silence as Bravo and Evolution watched viewership explode, and the rest of the cast enjoyed unseen levels of public recognition and professional opportunity. Meanwhile, Leviss, who was humiliated and villainized for public consumption, remains a shell of her former self, with her career prospects stunted and her reputation in tatters. Having taken the time necessary to heal mentally and emotionally, Leviss brings this action to long last to attain a measure of justice that has so far eluded her. And I'll pause before we get into the parties. So the parties involved are the plaintiff, Rachel Leviss, who is, and at all times relevant, was an individual residing in the county of Los Angeles, state of California. Leviss is a former cast member on Vanderpump Rules. Defendant Tom Sandoval is, and at all relevant times was, an individual residing in the county of Los Angeles, state of California. Sandoval is a reality television personality and current cast member on Vanderpump Rules. Same thing with Ariana, reality television personality and current cast member on Vanderpump Rules. Does 1 through 50 are individuals and or entities whose true names and capacities are currently not known to Leviss. Does 1 through 50 are legally responsible and liable to Leviss to the extent of the liability of the named defendants. Leviss will seek leave of the court to amend this complaint to reflect the true names and capacities of all the defendants, designated herein as Does 1 through 50, when such identities and capacities become known. At all times herein, each of the defendants was the agent, servant, employee, employer, joint venturer, and or alter ego, which is oddly specific, of each of the named defendants herein, and was at all times operating and acting within the purpose and scope of said agency, service, employment, joint venture, partnership, and or alter ego. Each defendant has rendered substantial assistance and encouragement to the other defendants, acting in concert, knowing that his, her, its conduct was wrongful and or unlawful, and each defendant has ratified and approved the acts of each of the remaining defendants. So they talk about jurisdiction, which we don't have to get into. It's all in California, but now these are the general allegations. They talk about the hostile and unsafe working environment on Vanderpump Rules, so it centers on the reality TV show. The 11th season premiered on January 30th. Rachel was a cast member from 2016 to 2023, but I think 2023 season 10 was her first main cast member season, I think. I think so. So she made her first appearance on the show as the girlfriend of cast member James Kennedy, a DJ prone to violent outbursts and grappling with long-standing substance abuse issues and emotional dysregulation. I will say he is super open about it. I'm not taking sides. He's been super open about it, and he is sober now. Kennedy would regularly berate Leviss, falsely accuse her of cheating, that we did see on the show, and act in a generally unhinged manner. I will say we've seen that. We've seen that too. We have seen him act unhinged, like 100%. Some of this was captured on camera, some was not. Leviss eventually warned Kennedy that she would leave him if he did not stop drinking. We did see that on camera too. However, she soon learned that his despicable behavior was not solely a function of alcohol abuse. At Thanksgiving with Leviss's family in Arizona, Kennedy erupted at Leviss's mother and father. They did talk about that in the reunion, and James did admit to that when they broke up, I think season 9. But they didn't mention this, but it's mentioned in the lawsuit, and kicked her family dog 4 times in an uncontrollable rage. In 2021, Leviss ended their relationship and broke off their engagement. Kennedy's history of violent and dangerous behavior was well known by Bravo, Evolution, and the cast. Kennedy once physically assaulted then cast member Kristen Doty on camera, which Kristen has also hinted at. I wonder if she's worried about litigation. She won't say it outright. She was a former cast member. She was fired along with Stassi Schroeder. Kristen has, oh man, I think we were talking about this the other day where she has her own podcast, Sex, Love, and Whatever Else Matters with her boyfriend, Luke. And he was like, what's his DJ name again? DJ Beats Women. So, I mean, there's a lot of people kind of confirming that he is actually abusive. So, however, the footage never aired, nor has Kennedy faced any repercussions for his actions, which would otherwise be fireable at a minimum, due in part to the intervention of his powerful ally, Lisa Vanderpump, who served as his protector. Lisa and James are super tight, but also I feel like Lisa is not a girl's girl. Lisa protects the men on the show and throws women under the bus. So in 2021, after 3 seasons as a recurring character, Leviss was cast as a lead. At the same time, however, Leviss was in a vulnerable state due to the breakdown of her engagement with Kennedy, which was catalyzed by his chronic substance use, emotional instability, and controlling behavior. While she had previously moderated her alcohol intake because of Kennedy's heavy drinking, Leviss began drinking much more heavily in the aftermath of their breakup. 100% true. And she's tiny. By season 10, Kennedy had resumed drinking again and picked up a new girlfriend weeks after his breakup. Leviss was encouraged to do so by production and Sandoval, who believed it would make for better television and readily provided alcohol for her consumption.
She puts not only the blame on production for her drinking, but but also specifically on Sandoval. But again, I got to go up to, you're an adult, you're literally in your late 20s at this point. That is your choice to drink or not. But I don't think that they were punching her nose shut. But I think that they're really trying to paint a picture by telling a whole bunch of stuff that really doesn't ultimately matter towards this lawsuit. I think what they're painting a picture of, she was a very vulnerable, abused person in her past who didn't have a lead in her life. And this older pedophile, for lack of better terms, because that's what they're trying to push, that almost with that age difference, it went and took advantage. Is that true?
I don't get pedophile vibes. I get that they're trying to push that Sandoval was in a position of power. He was an older castmate that has been on the show since season 1. And I 100% believe that he was pushing alcohol consumption. I'm not on her side. Like, I don't think Ariana should be in this suit whatsoever. I do think she has a case against Tom Sandoval. And I don't really, if she ever tried to sue Bravo, I think it would be stupid too. But if we're just thinking about Tom Sandoval trying to push alcohol consumption, if he's trying to get her drunk, which I could totally see. And if she was actually abused, then that's even worse because domestic violence is very intense and takes years for people to recover from. So I do 100%, if that's actually the case, understand her side with that. Yes, she decided to pick it up, but it's an older man who she said was like listening to her, being extra nice to her, encouraging her to drink. If that's actually true, it's shitty. She does hold some culpability, but I can 100% see that as...
And if she comes from a background of trauma, I can easily see, and again, age to me doesn't matter here in the sense that because they were both consenting adults, but it matters in the sense of he comes off as a superior person on the show because of time in. So I can understand how she may feel pressured, but realistically, it wasn't that she was pressured into having sex with him or having the relationship with him. And she doesn't say that the alcohol made her fall into that.
No, not at all. But I do think it is definitely a contributing factor when we're thinking about her emotional damage. I probably myself would have started drinking more heavily and have been easily influenced by somebody that's like older, more time on the show. I can easily see that with somebody who's in her situation. On or about August 10th of 2022, Leviss and Sandoval began sleeping together. The affair continued apace as Sandoval's relationship with Maddox further deteriorated. Although purportedly secret, the affair was in fact well known to many cast members and suspected by others. It was not well known, it was suspected. Leviss and Sandoval were not particularly discreet, true. Leviss is informed and believes, and on such information and belief alleges that Maddox knew about it as early as the fall of 2022. Indeed, in December of 2022, Maddox scolded Leviss and Sandoval for being handsy in public, admonishing them to save the story for season 11. This isn't true. I have notes. On Bethany's podcast, almost a year ago, Rachel says, quote, Tom and I couldn't come to a resolution on the timeline of it all because Tom didn't want Ariana to know how long it actually had been going on. This was summer of 2022. Bethany said, oh, so this went on for a while. And then she said, 7 months. So she begged to know. I told Ariana it had been going on for 7 months. So right out of the horse's mouth, Ariana didn't know. I'm just going to say, straight from the horse's mouth. At the time, Vanderpump Rules was facing an uncertain future. Interest among the public had waned and the plot had grown stale. That is true, but I still don't think this was formulated for the storyline. Maddox in particular was reportedly on the chopping block. No proof of that. In the absence of a sticky news storyline. Ew, why sticky? There is every reason to believe Vanderpump Rules would have been canceled. Maddox was as aware of these pressures as Sandoval, and both were heavily invested financially and reputationally in the show remaining on the air. By extension, if their relationship was already on the rocks, and if Sandoval was intent on brazenly carrying out an illicit affair with another cast member, they had every incentive to leverage these salacious threads into the storyline Vanderpump Rules so desperately needed. That is precisely what happened in a series of otherwise unlikely events. Sandoval and Maddox record and distribute illicit videos of Leviss. On or about March 1st, 2023, Sandoval was performing with his cover band at Tom Tom in West Hollywood when his phone purportedly fell from his pocket and slid, unlocked or otherwise fully accessible, into the crowd. It was reportedly retrieved by an attendee and handed over to Maddox, who searched it and found sexually explicit videos of Leviss. So they were on FaceTime at some point, Tom and Rachel, and he had recorded her allegedly without her knowledge, which is what Ariana found. Leviss is informed and believes, and on such information and belief alleges that the explicit videos were recorded by Sandoval without her knowledge or consent in or around February 2023, which is an important date to know because I'm going to talk about some federal statutes. The two videos Leviss had seen depict her in a state of undress and masturbating. However, given Sandoval's apparent practice of secretly recording their video calls, that's so shitty. Leviss has every reason to assume there are additional illicit videos and or photographs of her that she has not yet seen. Honestly, super terrifying and not okay.
And that's why when it boils down to this lawsuit, putting Tom Sandoval in it, I'm totally okay with, because the reality of this is not okay.
And also just a quick side note, Tom was recently interviewed like 2 weeks ago for New York Times, I think. It's actually insane what came out of his mouth. She was asking him about Scandoval and how big it is because it was a really big headline. And he was like, yeah, it's kind of crazy when you think about it. Like, I'm not saying that it's the same, but like, it's kind of like O.J. Simpson and George Floyd, don't you think? Like, what the fuck? No, it's not.
The moral of the story, that interview, don't hire a crisis publicist that's 23 years old. Because how much experience had that 23-year-old had in crisis when you're allowing this guy to talk?
George Floyd's family spoke out after that, and I'm just like, these poor people.
I can't even call that tone deaf. Like, you really can't even call that statement tone deaf. It's beyond that. It's just disgusting. Disgusting.
I think he should have been fired after that, but that'll never happen because LVP, Lisa Vanderpump, so their viewership has been dropping every episode, and I love it because if this season maintains a redemption arc, I personally will quit Vanderpump Rules. I will personally quit. Do you hear me, Andy Cohen? Do you hear me? I'm done, Andy. I'm done. Cut it.
We love you, Andy.
Leviss is informed and believes, and on such information and belief alleges that Maddox obtained at least 2 illicit videos of Leviss and distributed them and or showed them to others without Leviss's knowledge or consent. At a minimum, Maddox circulated the illicit videos to herself and Leviss. She also immediately informed production about what she had found. In addition, many other individuals have demonstrated intimate familiarity with their contents, leading Leviss to believe the circle of recipients is wider, which I'll get into. The only thing that is true in that statement is that immediately after Ariana found out, which she's confirmed, she told production. So I just love this subheading. Leviss battered after Maddox steals and sends illicit videos. This is all allegedly. On the night of March 1st, Leviss was in New York with another cast member, Sheena Shea, taping Watch What Happens Live with Andy Cohen. Having finished filming, Leviss and Shea were at a bar when Leviss received a text from Maddox that said, "You are dead to me." Pretty tame. I would have a lot more to say. I think I would immediately catch a flight to New York. And I'm not going to say anything else because I'm an adult, but I'd probably throw something at her, like a pie or a chair. Anyway, whatever's there, it's getting thrown. Alongside the message were 2 videos of Leviss that Maddox had purportedly discovered on Sandoval's phone. Leviss experienced a swirl of emotions in response, which I understand, including shock and fear. Shock because she did not know Sandoval had recorded pornographic videos of her. Fear because these videos were now in the hands of someone who hated her guts and was out for blood. She was terrified Maddox would leak them on the internet, which she didn't do. Spoiler alert. Reacting to the revelation in apparent shock and anger, Shea violently assaulted Leviss. I don't mean to laugh at that because I think assault is funny. I'm thinking of Sheena saying, "I cannot punch. Look at these nails. I can't even make a fist. So like, how can I like punch her when I can't even make a fist?"
Well, let's go into the whole science behind it. She's short as heck. So she's like 5'1" or 5'2", so she would have to punch uphill. The bruising doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but I'm not CSI here. Maybe it did, maybe we have no idea. But how she describes the alleged assault, it's kind of funny because if you just see the size difference between these ladies, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Sheena's so small. Rachel's like almost 6 feet tall.
She's like 5'1" or 5'2". She's like, like maybe like 110 pounds, maybe after she ate a burger or 5.
So who knows if it actually happened or not. Rachel did file a TRO, temporary restraining order. She actually has said that she did it under Tom Sandoval's instruction, which I'm not gonna lie, I fucking believe that. But she did end up dropping it. So I don't know. I'm not gonna get into that because we weren't there. But that is what happened. Shoving her aggressively into a brick wall. Dude, she's so small. Punching her in the face and throwing her phone onto the street. She probably threw her phone onto the street. Which, oh God, you just made $300,000 in a 3-month period. Boo-hoo.
She could have been hit. I wasn't there, so I have no idea. She could have very well been hit or had some sort of impact, or maybe a phone hit her face, who we don't even know. But with that said, to show the amount of coloring she had in her face, it doesn't match the wordage that was used in the complaint. And there's really no bruising at all.
This is the best. So the blow to Leviss's face caused a rupture above her left eyebrow and severe swelling and bruising above her left eye. They filmed right after that, and you can see it's just like a little tiny, there's like a little baby scratch on her eye. So again, this is all alleged. Do I actually think the assault happened? If anything did happen, it was definitely 100% not that intense. So she flew home the next day and informed her family of what was happening. And now they're talking about how Bravo capitalized on Scandoval. News of the affair and its aftermath, dubbed Scandoval, broke on March 3rd. When TMZ first reported the affair, TMZ was probably like, oh my God, guys, we're not in the hole anymore. This is our big break. Perez Hilton was probably like, damn, I wish I broke this. This initial reporting was quickly followed by a torrent of follow-up stories. By March 4th, tabloids had already begun reporting on the pornographic videos of Leviss, citing unnamed sources. Although filming for season 10 had already wrapped, Bravo and Evolution had a camera crew ready to shoot the next day. Of course they did. It's reality TV.
You're in reality TV. There's a reason why she called her producers and said, pick up your cameras because you need to know what's going down.
How pissed do you think Jax was that he was no longer a cast member? He was probably throwing a fit like, well, I knew it.
I knew everyone should have listened to me.
So Scandoval captured the public's attention. Anyway, she entered into a 3-month-long inpatient treatment at a mental health facility, which I'm not going to lie, I respect that. I really, and people were making fun of that, which I thought was really shitty. They were like, oh, she's at a spa. She stopped filming the day that last scene was filmed. Wasn't heard from, completely blocked everybody. And I will say I respect that.
She could have done what everybody else did and start cashing in on it, but she took steps to take care of herself because she knew that what she did was not right. And she was in this horrible pattern mentally. And she did what she needed to do to break out of that. And I totally respect that she did that.
Me too. And she actually ended up saying that she was suicidal, which I completely get because she was getting so much hate. And What I thought was interesting is in her podcast, she's been saying that she was only supposed to stay for a month or 2 months, and she kept lengthening her stay because she knew she wasn't ready. And Tom Sandoval kept trying to get her to leave early. And that's the reason why she ended up breaking up with him and blocking him, which he talks about. It's so 100% a Tom Sandoval move. 100%.
If you would have looked at that was 6 months ago, she would have checked out. So good for her that she gained the strength she needed to break out of that cycle.
Yeah, I'm glad she got out of that. On March 4th, 2023, the day after news of the affair had broken, production directed Leviss to film with Sandoval at her Los Angeles apartment. I have notes on that too. With cameras rolling, Leviss confronted Sandoval for secretly recording pornographic videos of her and storing them unprotected on his phone. Sandoval had not only invaded her privacy and breached her trust, but had also left her enormously vulnerable to a nightmare scenario of the videos leaking on the internet. Sandoval responded to Leviss's fury with cowardice and lies, claiming falsely that he had obtained permission to record her. Bull fucking shit. Seeing that Leviss was having none of it, however, Sandoval ultimately offered a reluctant admission and sheepish apology. Sandoval was clearly rattled. He's such a freaking baby. After filming ended, an erratic and unsettled Sandoval refused to leave Leviss's apartment in spite of her requests. Leviss was forced to have her sister and brother-in-law pick her up and drive her to their home. That day, Leviss retained an attorney to mitigate the risk of the illicit videos leaking. Once at her sister's home, Leviss turned off her phone for 2 days, hoping that the heat would die down. However, media reports suggest Sandoval was in a panic over the on-camera confrontation with Leviss. Specifically, he was concerned that being accused of recording non-consensual pornography would paint him in a negative light. Sandoval reportedly threatened to cease all further filming for the show unless he was granted editing rights over the scene. Shockingly, Bravo and Evolution obliged his demand. If that's true, and I'll say why when I'm done with the paragraph, I believe it is true, that is insanely fucked up and Bravo should be culpable. I mean, you just can't edit this shit out simply because you're opening up risk. The scene was selectively edited to omit any mention of Sandoval's illicit recording of Leviss's lack of consent. This was part of a pattern and practice of Bravo and Evolution throwing Leviss under the bus in favor of Sandoval. I am inclined to believe that too. Recording someone engaged in sex acts without their consent is a crime, and Sandoval appears to have admitted to it on camera, portraying the confrontation as it actually occurred instead of protecting sleazy Sandoval. Woo! Would not only have been truthful, it would have also been good television. That's also true. It would have been really good. But Bravo and Evolution had apparently decided that Leviss would be their sacrificial lamb. Throughout the ordeal, they have sanitized the story to ensure Leviss would be seen as the arch villain. She did say that on Bethany's podcast when it first came out. And Stassi, who you know never talks about VPR on her podcast, released an episode, I think, within the last week. She basically said the same thing. She talked about Rachel's accusations. She said she believed it. And she said that Bravo and production has a history in the show of editing things out for the men in the show to make them look better and the women look worse. So I am inclined to believe that that's true. And that's really shitty. And also, if they did edit that out and they are not turning that information over and they figure that out in the process of this lawsuit, that is a big deal. That's a big deal.
Absolutely. But it'll be interesting to see how they can prove it. That's the problem. There's got to be a way, if they're saying it, and in Discovery, it's going to come out because, yeah.
They probably have it saved. But even if they don't, you can get a forensic analyst in there and see. I'm sure it could be recovered.
You can't tell me they're not subpoenaing tape or even Ariana's phone records. It's going to come out.
They already did that. On March 7th, Leviss's attorney sent out cease and desist letters to the cast regarding the distribution of the non-consensual illicit videos. The letters promptly leaked. Leviss also filed a police report and applied for a temporary restraining order against Sheena, the cast member who had assaulted her on March 1st. Despite initially bragging about having punched Leviss, there's no record of this, Shay began to adamantly deny it in public. She accused Leviss of lying and abusing the court system. This was in spite of Shay's own private and televised admissions of guilt and Leviss's visible facial injuries. By March 10th, Leviss had decided to check herself into a mental health facility. Sandoval, for his part, tried to talk her out of it and begged her to participate in the reunion. Leviss reluctantly agreed to wait on the condition that a mental health professional be on set in case things got out of hand, given her fragile mental state and the fury brewing among the cast. Bravo agreed and then changed its mind. Leviss then requested her publicist and confidant, Juliette Harris, be permitted to attend. Bravo agreed and then changed its mind. That's also really shitty if true. That could be easily proved, though. By that point, the reunion was the next day, too soon for Leviss to pull out, and she had no reasonable alternative but to participate. She had also feared the legal implications of refusing to appear, given the draconian terms of her contract, and so she did so, but without the support she felt she needed and that Bravo had previously offered to provide. At the same time, press coverage was slanted decidedly against Leviss, who became an object of scorn and ridicule. Other cast members were vilifying her in interviews and waging a public campaign against her on social media. They could not have done so without the blessing of Bravo, which pre-approves all cast member media appearances and exercises tight control over public messaging. This is true. Notice how tight-lipped everybody was with the George Floyd comments that Sandoval made. So Bravo had clearly decided this feeding frenzy was good for ratings. Various cast members and Bravo itself also released their own Scandoval merchandise to cash in on the exploitation of interest, including an I Survived Scandoval long sleeve t-shirt currently available for sale on Bravo's website. I have an I Survived Scandoval sticker on my water bottles, so I can't really hate on that. But yeah.
But that's what they do. That's your job. I get both sides of this fence. I really do. Like if it was me, and if I were Rachel, I would be humiliated. And obviously she had mental health issues and that's why she went to get help. And thank God she did for herself. That's great. But I can also see everybody saying, now I have an opportunity, right? I can see it. These guys are not necessarily billionaires. So I could see it and I probably would take advantage of it too. I'll be honest. Is it right?
They go on to talk about Andy Cohen. I'm just going to skip that because I feel like it's not really relevant to the lawsuit. And then important because she does mention in the lawsuit that her image is damaged and they were definitely trying to play up she gave her dog up to a kill shelter. And I'm not going to lie, I actually don't believe that. I believe that the dog we mentioned before that's now with James, her ex-fiance, he started dating her when Graham was a puppy. When Rachel went to the mental health facility, her mom had taken Graham, but Graham had and still has a history of biting. So they brought him to a trainer. The trainer got bit, and then they had to give up Graham. They did start to say, Lisa Vanderpump in particular, that they gave Graham up to a kill shelter, which I don't think is true. And that is really shitty. And that is definitely making her character look poor.
I think that with reality TV, it's almost like pro wrestling in that you always have your heel and you always have your hero, or you even have sometimes a mix of the two being an anti-hero, same as the Marvel universe, right? And I think reality TV uses the exact same formula. I can only imagine as a person who already was suffering from mental health issues, how that would it impact me as a person? So I do have empathy towards Rachel in that piece because, you're already going through something pretty darn embarrassing and, you're worried these images are getting out. And then all of a sudden, boom, here you are talking about your dog and making you look bad about your dog. So we don't really know what happened either way 100%, but you can kind of see how the narrative was pushed.
You can see it on the show too. And that would be the straw that broke my back. Personally, if somebody tried to say that I gave up my sweet baby angel Coda to a kill shelter, that would gut me. If people thought that I did that to my dog, I think I'd snap. And you can see on the show, she cared about Graham. I'm not saying James didn't care about Graham. I know there's the allegations of the animal abuse, but we don't know if that's true or not. So I don't know whether it's true or not, but it is kind of crappy to push the narrative of the kill shelter. And I did an episode, this is like kind of unrelated, not really, like almost a year ago now with CJ called The Gay Panic Defense. And it was about Scott Amador and the Jenny Jones show. And it was The Secret Crush. And production had kind of lied to the guy and said who was straight. Yeah, it's a woman, but it was his friend who was gay. And this was back in the early 90s when that was a big no-no. And so I made a really big case about ambush TV. Yeah, it's entertaining, oh, gotcha, here's the surprise. But there should be like a certain line drawn in the sand when we're thinking about people's mental health or situations where it could cause somebody to commit murder. And I think those lines are blurred.
And I really hope that changes. I really hope that changes, that people remember that these are people too.
Yeah. I don't want Bravo to go away, but
No, I need my dirty, nasty TV, but there is a way to do it better.
So now I'm going to get into, actually, instead of reading, I just have notes. I think it'll just be a lot easier. So the first thing I thought is when they're talking about the reunion and the insults, I was like, this is so Bethany Frankel coded, because when she had Rachel for her reality reckoning on her podcast a year ago, she just kept talking about the insults that she was getting on the reunion. And I'm like, yeah, they were mean, but like, if I was Ariana, I would have probably said the same stuff. It doesn't make it okay.
But it was only it was like what, a week or two later?
2 weeks?
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I'm just saying, if one of my best friends or my close friends, and I found out was sleep with my husband behind my back on camera and doing things to be noticed for that long, I would be saying some names too.
So now the lawsuit is against Tom Sandoval, Ariana Maddox, and Doe's 1 through 50. And one of the things that they're talking about is the revenge porn, which involves the distribution. But I want to read a quote from Ariana in August 2023. She was on Sheena's podcast, and she said, "To be very clear, I have not shown or sent that video. I don't have it. I did not hold on to it for any reason. The video was gone before I ever even called her on the phone. And just so everyone knows, I saw about 5 seconds of it. I wasn't sitting there opening popcorn." And then she continues, "So I know that she said that people know about what's in it. It's very simple. I think it's like straightforward. People know what's in it, you know?"
If you see 5 seconds, you know how it's going to go down. You don't need to see more. But the reality of it is, if I open my husband's phone and I seen 5 seconds of that, I really don't need to see the rest. I would send it to myself for a future court case, but I would not disseminate that to anybody.
I wouldn't send it to anybody. I would probably talk to like a friend about it, which is one of the things that I think she's trying to argue, which I'll get into later. But regarding the cease and desist that Rachel had sent, I think the next day or 2 days later, Ariana said, "The other thing is my lawyer made all of that very clear the second she sent cease and desist to the entire cast, just as a precaution. My lawyer responded to said precaution with very thorough and very clear information that proved and showed that." And it was ultimately proved that Ariana did surrender her phone for forensic analysis back almost a year ago when all this happened. And Ariana's lawyers responded and said that they would provide her phone to Rachel's legal team for forensic review, and they never replied. So if there actually was forensic evidence or the potential for it, her lawyer should have responded and a police report should have been filed.
Basically, when it comes to that point, Rachel's lawsuit is claiming that Ariana shared this non-consensual video, which caused her reputation to fall apart. That is the big claim. But there literally is no evidence that Ariana actually shared the videos beyond her sending them to herself, nor did she know at that time that Rachel did not consent with that video being made. So that is where the problem with this lawsuit sits, is unless they have that forensic evidence that she shared it around after receiving that letter, how are you going to prove it? Because before that, she had no idea that there was no consent with that.
Yeah. In order to violate California's revenge porn laws, she has to meet the following elements. So intentional distribution. So the accused must have intentionally distributed an image or video that depicts intimate body parts or a person engaging in sexual act. Lack of consent, which is met. The depicted individuals did not consent to the distribution, which I'll get into distribution later. Expectation of privacy, which I understand. There was an understanding that the images or videos would remain private. Knowledge of emotional distress. The distributor knew or should have known that their actions would cause the depicted individual serious emotional distress and actual emotional distress. The victim suffered serious emotional distress as a result. There can be a couple of legal defenses to these charges. So lack of intent to distribute, which is obvious in Ariana's case. No intent to cause emotional distress, which I also think is the same thing with Ariana. Consent by the victim. I think that one's going to be hard because I believe her when she says that there was no consent. But then they can also try to argue lack of emotional distress.
The suing Ariana is a very, very bad move. What they actually should have went is straight at Tom for doing the recording without consent and versus leaving Ariana alone. So I think she would have had more success going that route, most definitely. And also, the thing is that Rachel's credibility in the document itself is a little weak because of simple things like she said that Sandoval received a developmental deal for Bravo for job well done for making a good storyline, along with a pay raise, but there's already out there that this deal never existed. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all comes out. Like, again, discovery is going to be interesting in this case.
Yeah. So she's seeking damages for revenge porn, which is obviously intentionally distributing the screen recording that Sandoval took of her and Sandoval when they were doing their sexy FaceTime without Rachel's consent. But Rachel would have to prove that Ariana knew or should have known that Rachel had assumed that the video would remain private, which I think will be hard to prove because in that moment, she's not really thinking. She just found out. So that would be really hard to prove. She'd also have to prove that the distributed material exposes an intimate body part, which is easy. That we know. And that Rachel suffered damages as a result, either general or special damages, which we know, but there's no irrefutable proof that Ariana knew or should have known in that moment that, for all she knew, it could have been consensual. We don't know.
Exactly. And if I'm just saying, trying to put myself in her shoes. If I opened up the husband's phone and I seen a video like that, I would presume reasonably it was consented, right? I would presume that this person wanted to be recorded. But in the same breath, you find out later it isn't. It's kind of, yeah. I personally do not believe that Ariana at all believed that she didn't consent. And it's horrible that Tom did that without consent. And I think he never expected those to be seen.
That's what she should have done. And I think Ariana would have had her back because Ariana is going to be truthful and honest. So I think she messed up.
But the one thing I found very interesting, have you read about, firstly, that Rachel's lawyers are actually Bethany Frankel's lawyers, which I thought was very, very telling. And these lawyers are doing all the cases that are going against Bravo right now, which I'm like, oh, okay, so we have the anti-Bravo lawyers. Okay, that makes sense. But have you read their statements? Those statements are a little off for me because the first lawyer is talking about, he said, and I quote, "I'm outraged that NBC and Bravo used illegal NDAs and crutch shells to profit off their employees. The idea that human beings are expected to sacrifice their mental and emotional health in service of Bravo's ratings obscene." So, question. Is there any proof of these NDAs? What are the NDAs saying? And why is this even an issue in this case?
Well, we don't know, and it could very well be true, and it could be an issue in this case because if they are intentionally hiding things or making people feel like she said that she was scared to not do the reunion after they flip-flopped on her because of their draconian agreements, it could very well be true. And in that case, it would absolutely be relevant to the case because that could cause her more emotional distress.
But then the second lawyer made a different statement, and he said, Tom and Ariana are alleged here to have engaged in criminal acts. They then doubled down and used those actions to shame, bully, belittle, and intentionally try to destroy Rachel's mental health. The law makes it clear that recording someone without their consent and distributing that illegal recording is punishable by law. However, doing so while knowingly enticing them to engage in sexual acts deserves the harshest penalties allowable under the law. So if that was the case and that's what they're concentrating on, why are you suing Ariana? Because absolutely, I agree at that statement. If she was enticed to engage in that act and was recorded and he recorded without consent, go after that guy. Absolutely. But why Ariana?
Well, I don't think this is coming from Rachel, to be honest. I think she was just given bad legal advice, and that's sadly not on her. I do think it makes sense that uniformly people that are bringing up lawsuits against Bravo parties or Bravo itself, I also think it just makes sense because they're going to intimately know the ins and outs of Bravo even more. That makes them more knowledgeable than other lawyers. So I guess it also, in the same vein, it also kind of makes sense that they're just all handling it. But we don't know, at the end of the day, we really don't know what's going on.
And the reality of this reality show is, I think I'm going to go and put myself on the limb and say 6 months to a year. With these lawsuits, we're going to find out that the reality shows are not the reality that we thought they were. And that there's a lot of things that go on there that we would be not so happy with. I think that's what these cases are going to prove to a certain extent.
Yeah. So I want to go on more about specifically what Rachel is pushing and what she would have to prove or not. But with Ariana, whether or not sending it to herself would be considered for distribution is actually somewhat unprecedented. So that's up for debate. So you could argue that she likely knew or should have known that Rachel didn't know that this was being recorded. But in my opinion, in that moment, it's obvious that she's not going to be thinking about that. But honestly, it could go either way. So she could argue pain and suffering or emotional distress regarding damages. But she's going to have a really hard time getting that when it comes to Ariana, because unless you can prove that she distributed it to others, which based on the forensic evidence, we know that that's not true. It's highly unlikely. She could say, hey, I'd like repayment for my stay at the mental health facility, which I'm sure was really expensive. And then the eavesdropping, she's seeking damages from Sandoval for that under the California Invasion of Privacy Act, because it is illegal to record confidential conversations without consent of every party involved, which includes phone conversations. When somebody violates this act, because California is a two-party consent state, victims can recover civil damages of $5,000 or 3 times that amount, so $15,000 of the actual damage, whichever is greater. So if she can prove that Tom recorded her without her consent, she could get anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000 due to her pain and suffering, her having to go stay at a mental health facility, bills she acquired from that, and potentially any future expenses that she may incur if she can prove that this eavesdropping was a cause of her pain and suffering. She could also, which she hasn't done yet, file a federal suit, which again, she hasn't done yet. In March of 2022, as part of the Violence Against Women Act Reauthorization Act, Congress added a section titled Civil Action Relating to Disclosure of Intimate Images. So individuals are now able to file a federal suit against a person who disclosed intimate images or videos without consent. And this went into effect October 1st, 2022. So depending on when those were recorded, which they could get easily through metadata. And according to that, the civil action portion under the right of action, it reads, in general, except as provided in paragraph 4, an individual whose intimate visual is disclosed in or affecting interstate or foreign commerce, this is just for jurisdictional purposes, or using any means or facility of interstate or foreign commerce without the consent of the individual, where such disclosure was made by a person who knows that or recklessly disregards whether the individual has not consented to such disclosure, may bring a civil action against that person in an appropriate district court of the United States for relief as set forth in paragraph 3. Cell phones can be considered instruments of interstate commerce, so she's 100% valid there. And victims of revenge porn under this statute can sue for actual or liquidated damages of $158,000. She can also request a TRO. And there you have it, the lawsuit showdown between Rachel Leviss and Tom Sandoval. It's truly been a wild ride from the back alley to the courthouse, proving that reality TV doesn't hold back, and neither does Vanderpump Rules stars when it comes to legal battles over affairs of the heart. As I close this chapter, remember that in the world of Vanderpump Rules, love might come and go, but lawsuits, they stick around like a bad hangover after a night at SUR. If you liked what you heard today, please rate, review, subscribe. You can find me on all socials at fthatpod, except for Instagram, which is fthat_pod. Patreon, fthatpod for bonus content, bonus episodes, early releases, archived episodes, and ad-free episodes. And the website is fthatpod.com.